can do it all at corner, honestly, and I can shut down the whole side of the field.
Michigan cornerback Will Johnson has declared for the NFL draft. It's that time of year.
Third-year junior, 6'2", 202. You're building someone in the lab to play cornerback. I don't know what box he was in Chattanooga.
Will Johnson, cornerback, Michigan. The number one player, the number one ranked consensus player on the prospect fatigue consensus big board. The player that's had the most amount of hate, the most amount of overthinking, the most amount of prospect fatigue, in my opinion, throughout this process. Let's jump right into Will Johnson. Will Johnson, a 5-star commit to Michigan as a cornerback. He also played wide receiver in high school, 6'2", 194 pounds. Some places have him listed at 202 or 205, but I think he weighed in at the combine at 194, and I think 194 was the weight showing on his RAS score as well. He's currently ranked number 12 on the consensus big board. Going into the season, he was definitely a top 5 player. Some injuries have obviously factored into that. Obviously, his play being affected by those injuries has caused him to drop a little bit. So he's currently sitting at 12 overall. I don't think he's at all the 12th best player in this class. I think he's a lot higher than that, but we'll go into that shortly. With Will Johnson, he's got the size and the frame to match up against any wide receiver, not only in this class, but also in the NFL as well. Over his career, he's had 9 career interceptions, 3 of those leading to pick sixes. So the definition of a ball hawk. He's shown he can tackle. He's played at the line of scrimmage, and he's also played in space. He's shown on the tape that he can come downhill to make plays as well. And in 2023, not only was he the national champion, but he was also first team for the Big Ten at the cornerback position. One thing I love about Will Johnson is he is someone who is going to be a lockdown corner, and he can lock down plays without having to have his hands all over them. Like you see prospects every single year coming out of the draft, and a flaw or a concern is they're very handsy. They've gotten called for a lot of flags. Nope, not Will Johnson. His football IQ, his route recognition are some of the best we've seen coming out of college into the NFL. He's honestly as smart as it comes. Such an outstanding high level recognition of what's going on in front of him. Now let's dive into some metrics around his coverage. There's people out there saying he's not a good man coverage corner. Respectfully, that could not be more false. He's excellent in both man and zone. If we just dive into some data behind his coverage, you can see in 2023, his sophomore year, he had a man coverage grade of 74.9 and a zone coverage grade of 71.4. So that's well above average. It's good. And his passer rating in his sophomore season was 29.1. We'll just sort of put a pin in that for now. I'll go back to the passer rating, but 29.1 passer rating as a sophomore. So outstanding as an outside corner as well. 2022, his man coverage grade, so as a freshman, was 91.1, which was the number 1 man coverage grade in the country, and that was tied with Quinyon Mitchell, who was playing at Toledo. So the competition obviously not up to scratch, well, not up to the level of that of Will Johnson. His zone coverage grade in 2022 was 77.6. Both of these grades were number 1 on the Michigan team, where they had guys like DJ Turner and also Mikey Sandra still. And finally, the 2024 season, which I think has been obviously the reason why he's dropped on the consensus and been suffering sort of this prospect fatigue, was his man coverage grade was 50.6 and his zone coverage grade was 75.0. So still good in the zone coverage for 2024, and obviously a dip in man coverage grade in 2024 with that 50.6. But bear in mind, cornerback is a position where it can fluctuate a lot. It's probably the most inconsistent position when it comes to maintaining strong grades in terms of coverage. We've seen that with multiple examples in the past, and there's plenty of data to back that up as well. As previously mentioned, 9 career interceptions, 3 pick sixes, and throughout his college career since 2022, he's only allowed 2 touchdowns, where both came out of his freshman season. I think one was in zone coverage and one was also in man coverage as well. However, since 2023, he's had 478 coverage snaps, where he's had 6 interceptions and 0 touchdowns allowed. He's had 4 pass breakups, and he has had a passer rating of 36.7 with a total coverage grade since 2023 of 84.1. Now, to sort of touch back to a passer rating I mentioned in his sophomore year when he was fully healthy, that's a big factor that's not being, I think, taken into account for his 2024, is he was fully healthy in 2023. He obviously had a minor surgery, which we'll talk about later, that he had to clean up at the start of the year, but the majority of 2023, he was good to go. So basically, a passer rating when spiking the ball is 39.6. I'll repeat that again. So if you're spiking the ball, the passer rating there is 39.6. And Will Johnson had a 36.7 passer rating since 2023. And when fully healthy in that 2023 year, his passer rating was 29.1. So you're better off spiking the ball than throwing it to Will Johnson. In terms of his entire college career, if you're going to look at it as a whole, his passer rating was 49.8, so still phenomenal, and a coverage grade of 91.3. So an elite coverage grade for his college career, up against some of the best competition, allowing 2 touchdowns, both coming in his freshman year, 9 interceptions, and 3 pick sixes. Phenomenal. He has the tools to play press coverage. He's probably better suited to playing off coverage with his vision, his eyes, and explosive going forward ability, along with his smoothness and his playmaking mentality. So he's probably better off suited for a sort of zone scheme, which we'll get to very shortly, why that's a good thing. I think he's also got excellent hips. He can sink, he can redirect, and his smoothness is shown even more with his ability to plant and drive downhill, especially for a bigger cornerback. Now, he's had many comps to Pat Surtain. I know in a recent video he put up, which is sort of a video leading up to the draft, there was a defensive back coach that wanted to sort of coach him and is currently coaching him, and he looked at his tape and he was like, that's Pat Surtain. It reminds me so much of Pat. Another player he's been comped to is Trayvon Diggs. I've also seen James Bradbury comps thrown around, so that's sort of the corner you're looking at from a comp perspective. And he's also confirmed that well, not confirmed, but he's also mentioned that he's watched a ton of Pat Surtain, a ton of JC Horn in high school, so he's been studying tape, he's been watching the top guys for a while. He's got this sort of mental makeup you want from a high-end cornerback and a guy who's going to be a lockdown cornerback one in the NFL. So when it comes to the Cardinals, he's already confirmed he's had a top visit with the Cardinals. Shout out to my guy MHJ Era on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. He had the clip. I'll put it up now.
You taking something already?
Yeah, the Cardinals and the Falcons are 2 I'll take.
You can do their local day?
What you say?
You're going to do their local day?
What's that?
Local visit?
I'm actually training in Arizona, so I won't be here, but no, I don't got nothing planned.
And he's also confirmed he's currently training in Arizona, and his video as well that he put up, it's about 40 minutes long. He's training at the Exos facility in Arizona. And another sort of issue with, I guess, Will Johnson being selected at 16 for the Cardinals and some stuff I've seen from the fan base is we've already invested picks at cornerback in previous drafts. Guys, there were no cornerbacks on this roster when Monty Ossenfort took over. I'll put up the Cardinals cornerback roster when Monty took over the job. We were in a clear rebuild. Our quarterback was coming off an ACL injury. Quite frankly, I don't think anyone would have wanted to sign with the Cardinals at the time. You had Byron Murphy Jr. also leave to go to Minnesota. He did not want to come back. And then you're sort of looking at guys who weren't drafted that were there. You've got Antonio Hamilton. You've got DeVard Wilson. Antonio Hamilton in 2024 played 40 snaps for the Atlanta Falcons. Not many at all. And then DeVard Wilson played 26 snaps for the New York Giants, which came in Week 18 in a basically meaningless game for both teams. Now, why Will Johnson would be a great fit in Arizona? Well, the Cardinals lean more into a zone-type scheme. You know, last year we sort of switched. We saw, Gannon and Rala switch things up where they incorporated a bit more press man, and that was quite frankly because our defensive line was complete and utter trash. So they had to mix things up. They had to throw in some funky things to sort of try compensate for that bad D-line and quite frankly, lack of pass rush we're getting as well. We know Jonathan Gannon comes from the Vic Fangio tree, loves to play quarters coverage, a much heavier zone coverage scheme than it is a man scheme. Now, in 2023, we saw the Cardinals also ran the most amount of quarters coverage, sort of that cover 4, which is sort of a backbone of that Fangio-esque defense. And the Cardinals were dead last in man coverage, cover 1, and they ran at about 8% in 2023. We can look at sort of the percentages from man and zone from Gannon back in Philly in 2022, where they ran obviously more zone than man. In 2023 as well, with the Cardinals, we saw a lot more zone than man being run. And again, you can see a trend here. In 2024, more zone coverage than man coverage with this scheme. So it's not like we're a Detroit Lions where you're asking your corners to play man coverage 50% of the time. It's not like that. It's much more zone. Now you're probably thinking, why am I going down this rabbit hole? I'm sort of going to give an explanation as to the JG Fangio style defense and then explain why Will Johnson is a perfect fit. So with this type of defense, the defense is predicated basically on creating confusion for the quarterback, and that's mainly with pre and post snap alignment changes, while also having your defensive backs play in zone coverage with their eyes facing towards the quarterback. So therefore, the defensive backs with their eyes on the quarterback have the potential to jump any bad reads and pick off balls, etc. And that's basically because it's a lot easier to pick off the ball when you're facing the quarterback rather than when you're having to turn your back to the quarterback and run playing man coverage. Now again, another crucial concept of this scheme is that defensive backs are supposed to keep things in front of them at all times, and the main reason for this is to prevent any sort of big plays from happening. That forces the quarterback to make multiple good reads on a single given drive. So with the alignment changes, it makes things a lot more complex for the quarterback to process, and it also puts the defensive backs in the best possible position to sort of execute an interception if one of those mistakes pops up where the quarterback makes a bad read or makes a late read or makes a late throw or a bad throw, bam, the defensive back is in a position to pick it off due to the scheme. So with that being said, does that ring any bells? Does that sound like a particular cornerback in the draft? Yes, it sounds like a perfect fit for Will Johnson, who like I said, his football IQ is outstanding, his route recognition is outstanding, and that's only backed up by the fact that he's had 9 interceptions, and 3 of those going back to the house for pick sixes. So a perfect fit as a true number 1 corner in this system. And you're probably thinking, we already have a number 1 corner. Garrett Williams is phenomenal. Yes, he's phenomenal, but he's a slot-only player. He's played 547 snaps in the slot, and he's only played 11 snaps at outside corner, going off 2024. And I know a lot of people are frustrated that we traded back and we didn't take Cooper DeJean. Well, guess what, guys? Cooper DeJean only played 8 snaps at outside corner. 8 snaps. So him and Garrett Williams would have basically been playing the same position, and guess what? Garrett Williams is a better player. So hopefully we can put that to rest. No disrespect to Cooper DeJean. He's a great player, but we have that type of player already. So I don't really fault Monty for moving back and taking a shot with an outside corner like Max Melton. Now, looking at the Cardinals defense last year, we were bottom 10 in interceptions. We only had 9 interceptions. And in terms of turnover differential, we were ranked in the bottom half of the league with a -3. Again, looking at some more coverage statistics, the Cardinals ranked 16th in coverage grade. However, this is overblown because if you look at the actual coverage grades, the higher sort of coverage grades were not actually by players who play the cornerback position. I mean, I think Victor Dimukeje had the number 1 coverage grade on the team. He's not on the team. And he's probably going to play like 100 snaps for the Giants. If you're specifically looking at the 3 cornerbacks who played outside corner, all 3 had a 60 or lower coverage grade, and only 3 interceptions came from those outside corners, and all 3 were from Sean Murphy-Bunting, who's got a laundry list of issues as a player. So, another angle to look at is the missed tackle percentage. This was another thing I saw popping up a lot with Will Johnson. Gone into a little bit of a deep dive in terms of the missed tackle percentages from our current cornerbacks, comparing them to Will Johnson currently, and Will Johnson in 2023, and also having a look back at our drafted players or undrafted pickups, and their sort of similar grading to how Will Johnson was in college, those 2 years. In terms of a missed tackle percentage, you've got Starling Thomas, who was at just under 8%, you had Max Melton, who was at 10%, and you had Sean Murphy-Bunting, who was a whopping 23.4%. So if you look at Will Johnson in comparison, Will Johnson, his missed tackle percentage in 2024 was 20.8%, which again is slightly higher than Max Melton, lower than Sean Murphy-Bunting, and double Starling Thomas. However, when he was healthy in 2023, his missed tackle percentage was 13.3%. So better than Melton, better than Bunting, and slightly behind Starling Thomas. Now, when you're looking at missed tackle percentage purely on passing plays, Will Johnson last year had a 21.4% missed tackle rate. In 2023, when healthy, again, it was at 10%, which is quite drastically lower than Sean Murphy-Bunting, the same as Melton, and slightly behind Starling Thomas. However, when you're looking at their tackling grade, again, you can see the 2024 Will Johnson stats on the screen. I'm just going to go off 2023 because that's when he was healthy, so that's what I'm going to go off. A 69 tackling grade for Will Johnson, which was better than all three of our current outside starting corners. A run defense grade of 72.6, again, which was much better than all three of our starting corners. And then a coverage grade of 78.5, again, far better than any of our three outside starting corners. And when you're looking at penalties as well, after you sort of take the offsets or the decline penalties, Will Johnson, again, clears. Max Melton had one, obviously, and one decline or offsetting. However, Will Johnson right there, Starling Thomas 3, and then Sean Murphy Bunting a walking flag with 9. Now, going back and having a look at sort of these the players we've drafted, and Starling Thomas, obviously an undrafted player that we've picked up from Detroit. You can see on screen as well, Max Melton had a ridiculously high missed tackle percentage on both overall and also on passing plays, well over 20%, and his tackling grade was 41.7. So if you're going to sit here and criticize Will Johnson for his tackling, Max Melton was a far worse tackler at Rutgers, and you can see he's already improved with the coaching in the NFL. Now, Elijah Jones, he didn't play. He looked pretty bad in the preseason too, so if people are relying on Elijah Jones to sort of come in, we haven't seen him yet, so he's a bit of a wild card, but in the preseason, he didn't look too good. Again, very similar to sort of Will Johnson, obviously the coverage grade, 91.6 for Elijah Jones in college. However, that was sort of skewed a bit because those big grades came against Georgia Tech and Syracuse, who, I mean, no one's talking about the QBs or the skill position players of those two schools. So you can take that however you want it. Starling Thomas again. And mind you, Elijah Jones was a 6-year player, 25-year-old rookie. Okay, he finishes his rookie year as a 25-year-old player playing 6 years in college. That's something to take note of. Starling Thomas had 4 years at UAB, and the Lions had cornerback issues. They didn't choose to keep him around. He's 25 years old. Cool story, great story, but guys, let's stop getting hung up. We do this so often as Cardinals fans. We get hung up in good stories and sort of weigh that too heavily against the actual player. And finally, Max Melton had 4 years at Rutgers. He's still 23 years old, so still young. And then you look at Will Johnson, who finished his college career as a 21-year-old, so not 25, 21 as a 3-year player at Michigan. And when his rookie season is finished, he'll be 22 years old. Will Johnson's played against some really top-end talent. Washington with Penix, Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State, Drew Eller's there, Texas for Texas quarterbacks there. So he's got a resume against some really good competition. So he ticks all the boxes for me personally there. So again, I think this missed tackle percentage, this run defense, it's all been completely overblown. If he's actually answered that question at the combine, I'll put that clip up now in terms of his tackling and what he needs to get better at.
You a man-to-man? You like to play man-to-man, or you want to lock down people?
Yeah, I like to do it all.
That's what you do.
Yes,
What about an area of your football game that you just go, hey, for the NFL, I got to clean this up a little?
I would say tackling.
Yeah.
I would say that's my most inconsistent thing I put on tape.
Right.
So just cleaning that up and being more consistent with that. For sure.
Yeah. I'm the one that I don't really give a damn about tackling all that much when I evaluate the corners. I just want to see you cover people.
Yeah.
So again, Will Johnson's well over the fact that he's got to work a bit better on his tackling going off last year, but we're not drafting him. Like I said, this sort of stuff is being overblown a little bit too much. You're not drafting him to sit there and tackle guys consistently, even though the scheme requires it, and he can do it. The main reason you're drafting a corner is his coverage ability, and Will Johnson is far, far, far better than any corner on the Cardinals roster at the moment. Now, some concerns, definitely concern could be his long speed. He probably runs about a 4.5. Is that too concerning for me? In our scheme, no. And you've seen corners run that sort of speed before. Richard Sherman, 4.56. James Bradbury, 4.5. And then you've got players who've been comped to like Trayvon Diggs, who ran a bit quicker at 4.4. And you've got guys like Xavier Howard and Stephon Gilmore who also ran 4.4. So they're not blazing speed cornerbacks, and they still had great NFL careers. Again, just went over the tackling. That could be a knock on him as well. Had a bit of a downgrade in tackling this year. But for me personally, I don't have any issues with Will Johnson. as a tackler. You know, he shows effort. He's a willing tackler. And I'll put up a clip when they were down 18 points to Texas. He runs across the field to chase down this guy who was, for all money, going to score. Will Johnson did not give up on the play, went and made a tackle similar to how DK sort of chased down Buda Baker. So I think questioning his tackling, questioning his effort, again, it's overthinking it, it's overlooking it, it's getting too much into the prospect fatigue. So again, a concern you actually want to bring up is his injury history. 2023 in the spring had a knee injury which required surgery where he missed a couple of games. 2024 he missed a game due to a shoulder injury, and then 2024 season cut short due to a turf toe injury, which is a really bad injury for a corner. You can't run, you can't plant, so don't take that injury lightly in terms of the position he plays. So and then again, a hamstring injury, which stopped him from working out at his pro day. So he's had a few injuries over the last few years, which has seen his stock drop a little bit. So if you're going to bring up a concern about him and injuries is one, then 100% I'm going to agree with you. Injuries are the biggest concern for me, not his on-field play, not his ability to match up in man coverage, but the injury history. That is my number one concern with this player. Now, just finally going to go into some predictions as to the draft. I think there is a world he does fall to 16 and we steal him at 16, but some teams that could be looking at him, the Raiders, they just cut Jack Jones. They had a cornerback need even before that. And Chip Kelly's there. And the reason I'm saying Chip Kelly's there is the Raiders are currently favored to take Ashton Genty because Pete Carroll's there. He loves to run the ball. But Chip Kelly's also there, and those Ohio State running backs are going to be available when the Raiders pick in round 2. So we could see them take the running back in round 2 and then pick Will Johnson at 6. And then you've got some other teams like the Niners. Maybe Jahdae Barron's a better fit, but they could use a corner. I think they still end up going a defensive tackle. You've got the Dolphins. They have player needs everywhere. Offensive line, defensive line. You know, Calais leaving, Teron Armstead retiring. They could still take a corner though because their GM is terrible. And then lastly, the Saints. They traded Marshawn Lattimore. Brandon Staley is there as the new defensive coordinator, and he's similar to Gannon where he comes from that Vic Fangio tree. So we could see him also picked by the Saints. And finally, if he's there at 16, I'm taking him unless there's like some sort of drop by like an Abdul Carter or an Armin Membu. I'm taking him at 16. He's better than any defensive tackle, any edge, any guard, any offensive tackle, linebacker, safety that's going to be there at 16 if we're going off projected picks right now. He's the pick for me. I think the prospect fatigue has gone way too far. I hope I've shone some light into debunking all this sort of BS that's come out about Will Johnson. He's an elite prospect. He's an elite cornerback. And he's going to be a lockdown cornerback 1 in the NFL. I have no questions about that. The only thing I'm worried about is injury history. So that is one knock I have on him. But again, at 16, you're not getting an upgrade at corner like this in free agency, and you're not getting one after round 1 in this draft, in my opinion. If you've stuck around for this long, it's probably gone 25, 30 minutes. I hope you enjoyed the video. I've got a few more coming out. The draft is only 2.5 weeks away. Super excited. Will Johnson, cornerback 1, 2025 NFL draft. Hopefully he remains in Arizona where he's currently training, and he becomes an Arizona Cardinal. Peace.
Stepped in front of the throw and made an all-American kind of play.